Hello, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. So first we're going to do is we want to say welcome to everyone. Tony is going to start us off with a little bit of an intro, and then we'll start rolling in through the presentation. So Tony, we turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Let me get out of here. So everybody, thanks again for your time and your attendance. We started this just to support our installed base of customers. It was amazing how many people are coming and going, new system admins needing brought up to speed. Mike and Paul have been doing that for years as a one-on-one PS engagement, but just it's an ongoing with our customer base. So this was a nice way to do that, bring new people up to speed, so they can keep the plane in the air without crashing it. And it was also a way to advance your Issuetrak knowledge. And then we just kind of morphed into expanding it from there. So let's see. We got 2 hours planned for today. It is a big block of time, so come and go as necessary. We also put the recordings on Issuetrak.com. So we'll break those up into the 3 sessions that we typically use for the format. So for today, we do a 1-hour session in the beginning. Mike's going to be presenting. It has to do with service and work requests. We're going to do a 30-minute deep dive. I love the topic that Mike and Paul chose. It's the report writer. So it's something that every one of our customers does and needs, but they're not always as strong as they can be or as they want to be on generating those custom reports. Paul will be bringing up the end with the 15-minute new feature section. It was a long requested feature that finally made it into the product. I'm going to not play spoiler on this. And then Paul's also going to talk about the direction in our product roadmap. Let's see, Paul and I, when Mike's presenting, we'll be monitoring chat logs and the Q&As. So we'll try and either respond to those in that format, or we'll interrupt and steer the conversation to the presenter. So if it's something that can be better visually explained. Let's see here. So there's yours truly. I'm a local Virginia boy. Haven't gone real far. UNC was about as far as I went away. I'm the newbie here on the block. I've only been with Issuetrak 8 years, but I've done relationship sales my whole professional career. We got Mike Wright. He is the longest serving active employee. He has surpassed and out-survived the CEO. I think last month we announced Hank Loring, the founder and CEO, has stepped down, and Dan Flowers has taken over the helm in that role. So we're delighted to see that and Dan's active involvement. He did a session a couple of months back with us. So we're expecting great things from him. And then we got Paul Harris. Paul has a very strong technical background. He did the technical support like Mike did as well. Did that fielding the frontline phone calls, and then he went to the dark side on professional services, and he's our junior Wizard of Oz in terms of getting Issuetrak to meet your operational needs. So that's the 3 of us. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and we'll get started on the meat and potatoes of the session.
All right, let's see if I can get out of this and get into something else. Well, thank you for that introduction, Tony. So kind of appreciate this. We're going to get started with this, and I'm going to go through. Today's title is called Service and Work Request. And I always struggle with this because really, to me, they're the same thing. It's an issue, as we consider them within Issuetrak. But they have a little bit of difference when you're looking at them as far as a terminology is concerned. I went through and started looking for information out there, and I tried not to stay away from some of the competitors, but they actually boil down a couple of the requests in the best way. So I'm going to look at a work request first. What is a work request? Well, according to one definition that I picked up from the Business Dictionary online, it said an on-site authorization for additional work obtained through customer-client negotiations. Well, for me, that's a phone call. I need you to go fix this. I need you to go and do this. I need you to cut down a tree. I need you to install this. I need you to do something for me. And then I like this where it says, what's work? Job, something done to earn money. Most of the things it says, it's about money. You're going to get money or something in return for that. In some cases, it's an actual done of a contract or something like that, but really there's some sort of financial entity about this. I'm going to receive something for my efforts, so it's work. It's what it looks like. It's going to be done. So there was a couple things in here. Service request was a little bit different. There are stuff that comes really from different ITIL or different information technology that talks about service requests, and usually they have to do more with the service agreements that you're dealing with or some sort of defined service that an IT help desk is actually going to present. So what you're getting with that is it says here, it's a request from a user or user's authorized representative that initiates a service action that has been agreed as a normal part of the service delivery. So we've got this agreement of some sort that is in there. And sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's not. But it says, I am going to do these services for you. You make a request, I provide that service. A lot of times it's like IT. IT will go ahead and do something. Diane, she's kind of raised her hand. Can you see what she needs for me, please, Paul? And so what happens in here is these service requests a lot of times are like an IT help desk. An IT help desk or a service desk, they're providing service for a company. It's part of what they actually do. So what they end up doing is they get a request for that service, like an onboarding, an offboarding, or it could be a provisioning situation. Those are service. I kind of look at the difference a lot of times is services a lot of times are scheduled. They can be done later. Even work requests sometimes can be done later in service. So we're looking and scheduled. So we're looking at particular types of issues that a lot of times are not immediate. An incident that we get into where a computer's broken, you need to do something immediate on that phone call to solve it. So both of these type usually are going to be a little bit longer term is what's going to happen. Okay. So we're going to look at a few similarities when we're looking at Issuetrak as far as service work and work request. And Issuetrak, there's a lot of difference between them. Really, you put an issue, service request, work request, it's all defined as an issue within Issuetrak. Both requests do not have to be completed immediately. They can usually wait, and usually they must wait. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't. They could be done immediately. It depends on what request is being made. Some may have a work process involved. Sometimes, especially when you're doing an onboarding or an offboarding type service request, those can definitely have process behind them. And sometimes they even have to have an approval. If you think about a work request to go and fix a particular plumbing leak, for example, you don't know how many dollars are going to be involved in that fix until you go and investigate. And then you may need an approval in order to do that. So that's another work process that needs to be put in. They may be completed off-site. We have some customers that are doing landscaping, for example. A work request comes in and the particular request is for service to be done at the customer's residence. So they have to go to their house and take down a tree, cut the grass, or something like that. Or you may have an IT issue. The IT issue may be for your building, or it could be like a school system. It could be at a different school. So you have to do it at that location, or you may do it at the office because the servers are behind you. You may do the information right in your desk. So it could be either way. It could be on or off-site. Sometimes they have impacts. Service impacts that are defined by service terms. Especially in the service area, or especially even in work requests, you may have terms related to the contract with your customer, whether it's internal or external, that says you must complete this particular type of request within this amount of period of time. You must do this within this, you must respond back, those type of service requests, SLAs we call them a lot of times. But it could be just an agreement between you. They may have financial penalties involved if you fail to meet those requests. So if you don't meet the terms, you may have to pay your customer instead of your customer paying you. And like I said, they can be internal or external. Internal, a lot of times, again, the service desk, you call the service desk, you expect them to hook up your computer, fix your phone, answer your question, whatever it happens to be. External, you're doing that at a customer location or for a customer. These days we do a lot remotely, so it could be I need to go ahead and remote into your computer desk to fix your problem. If I can't do that, I have to send a technician out there in order to complete the request. So it could be a little bit of internal versus external. Do we have any questions that we need to respond to? Or are we okay? All right.
Yeah, we're good.
I think we're okay.
All right. So let's look at a few differences. Now, I'm going to say this is going to be a general statement because these may or may not always be true. These are general statements that I've kind of come up with. A service request and a work request generally have different processes. In general, a service request a lot of times is very static in what it has to be done. You have to go do this and this and this, where a work request could branch off depending on the type of work. There could be situations where, especially with approvals, the process is very linear, but if you have to go out and get another quote or multiple quotes to complete that work request, then that process can be very different than a normal service request. Approvals for work requests can be different approval paths depending on dollar values. With service work, it's usually already covered, so you just go ahead and get the service done. You may need an approval, but it's not going to really have any differences whether it's a lot of work or little work. It still needs to be completed within the service agreement that you've agreed to with that customer. On a work request, it could have a very, very different set of approvals and even numbers of approvals involved in about the work that's actually having to be done. I had a change request process that I did for a manufacturer, and they actually had a part of the path that, depending on what the change request was, they may have to get approval from the unions that they were working with or from a safety committee before that change could go through, depending on what the change was involving within their plant. So you can have all different types of approval paths depending on what the change is or what the work that needs to be done is within that particular environment, manufacturing for the most part. Service requests normally follow an established workflow that does not have a different path. So a service request is pretty linear. Again, onboarding, offboarding, they're pretty much going to stay within their little lane. They're not going to deviate too much. You're going to do this. Now, there are always exceptions, as I said, to any of these because it depends not only on what you're doing, but what company you're working for and what their particular processes are. So we have to have flexibility. And that's what all of this is about, is flexibility, having the flexibility to meet the needs within the different types of requests. And let's see, I must have missed one. They may have a work request could have a variable or direct impact upon revenue. For example, if I happen to be a company that's a landscaping company, for example, I may have different fees that are involved in what type of work request is going to be done. And it may be more hours involved in certain types of requests than another. And that could be for any type of business. Landscaping is one example. I've got some companies that work in the cable industry where they are actually going out and providing service. I've got other companies that may be providing service in the IT realm. So it may depend on what that particular request is about how big or how small the revenue from that particular request could be. And then service requests are normally covered by a contractual agreement of some sort. So a lot of times we see that. So that's what you'll end up seeing is usually that's a set price. You're going to cover it under this service contract for this many hours and for this amount. It's covered under that contract. So you don't have to worry about the revenue. It's really not going to have a big impact because the revenue has been set at the onset of the contract. So when we're building these, what kind of features are we going to be using in Issuetrak? Well, these are some of the things that we normally look at in a basic service or even work request. An issue type and a subtype, some sort of categorization, a custom screen. We're going to build the fields that we're going to use. We're going to see the user-defined fields be used in a lot of these, where we need to go ahead and add additional information that's not covered under the Issuetrak system. We'll look at quick picks. We're going to add quick picks or not add quick picks. So we'll have those. Task and task groups to build the processes involved. We may use incoming email because we may be taking work requests from customers by email and adding them into the Issuetrak queue. And then we may be doing outbound email to communicate with the customer and to the people who are actually doing the work, so we see what they're going to be doing. Now, sometimes we get a little bit more advanced. So that's a basics. Now we're going to take another little step. We're going to add in attachments maybe. So we want to make sure that we have the attachment feature turned on so we can add accompanying documents, photos, what other type of additional materials that are needed to complete that service or work request. We may add in business rules. Maybe we're doing different things where different requests go to different teams. So we want to work with the auto assignment. We want to make sure that we are being responsive. So we'll look at the escalation rules and make sure that the escalation rules are supporting our ability for our customers to be responded to or work with. Required by and target dates, we may add those particular features where we can put in a target date and even a required by date where we know this particular service work must be completed with or this work request must be completed. A substatus. Substatus we probably will use no matter what, but it gives us that ability to put a life cycle event. This particular request is come in, it's pending an assignment, it now needs to move to an assigned, it needs an approval, approval pending, approved, moved on, whatever it happens to be. Substatuses. User-defined fields, again, moving those in where we're adding those user-defined fields to add in additional information that's required for that request. Then let's take it to the next level from that. Service level agreements. We may be adding a service level agreement in Issuetrak that says we must respond within this amount of time and we must close this issue within this amount of time, dependent upon the severity of the request. So the work request a lot of times will do that. Service requests will do that also, where you'll have a service level involved so that you've got that ability to measure your compliance to your agreement with your customer. Special function table. Now that's an optional field that you may turn on. I've seen that used in certain situations where it's kind of a catch-all table. It's a 50-field table that's associated with an issue record. And when you associate that information together, you can get additional data that you need that may or may not be covered underneath your normal user-defined fields. As an example, a part could be entered in there, or a name of a person, student, whoever, and it's got a contact record. So I can create a history record of problems related to that particular item. Again, we talked about substatus, so we'll move into projects. Having the ability to associate a service work or a work request with a project. So a project in Issuetrak gives you that ability to create a linking between multiple issues and then kind of rolling up some of that data. How many dollars was involved? How many hours was involved? So I may have 10 issues and we'll roll in the labor hours up on those 10 issues into the labor hours on a project so we can look at it in a whole different way than looking at it from a report perspective. And then we have some add-on module capabilities that could be used for these type of requests. I'm going to start with the and kind of work this list from the bottom to the top. So asset management. Some of our service or work items may be associated with an asset, PC asset or non-PC asset. So we can put those on there and then associate those assets with them. For example, we have a customer that does essentially work at restaurants. And what they do is their assets that they're working on are the things behind the counter, the cooktops, the refrigerators, the HVAC systems. They can be assets, and then we can associate those with work requests or service work requests that come in from the managers of that restaurant. The surveys module. The surveys module gives you the capability of sending surveys. So you can create a survey, and when you close an issue, you can send a survey to the submitter, or you can even email a survey to someone. So you can get a response on how well you did. The billing module. Now, the billing module is when you're doing especially things like service work and work request, time and what you did are always things that comes into play. The billing module is probably the only module in Issuetrak that gives you a one-to-many capability. In a billing module item, I can go in and I can add a billing line item to record mileage that it took for us to drive from my office to the customer location, and I can charge actually per mile. I can then go ahead and say, well, it took us 4 hours for us to complete the work, and I can create a charge line per hour of rate, and then create it so it puts out an extended value for the number of hours being billed to the customer. I could even charge for parts. I can charge multiple hours because you can put multiple line items. If I have multiple trips to complete that particular project, I can put in multiple line items because there's no limit to the number of line items I can add for every issue. So it gives you a nice capability when you're doing this type of work to not only bill a customer, but provide them with information about the services that were involved in that particular billing, as well as comment lines to put in the details. So it goes right into Issuetrak, it goes into the labor hours on the ticket, so it has a lot of capability built into it to provide you with billing information to your customers. And finally, the web form. The web form is the newest of all of these offerings. The web form gives you the ability to build a service request so that you can essentially put it on a web page, and then it can go ahead and be filled in, and then that web form then can create the issue in Issuetrak that can then go ahead and be routed to the proper responding teams. So they don't have to even log into Issuetrak to create the issue. Now that's the newest of all of the capabilities in here, but any of those could be used in order to create service or work features in here. So usually when I do these, I try to go into the site a little bit. So let's see if we can do an onboarding. So I'm going to go into IT training here, and I am going to go to my dashboard, and hopefully it'll go ahead and render out everything out for me, and I'm going to go and do an onboarding. So I'll just do a submit just for time. I'm going to go in here, and I am going to drive down and find one of my onboarding in here. New employee. So a new employee request here is using some of the basic features that we talked about here in our webinar. Issue type, custom screens, quick picks. It's using the basics. So here in this CS training site, this is a site that you'll see soon in IT training. That's why I'm getting confused between the two of them. But here's the basics: caller, location, subject, description, class. Issue type is human resources. It's an employee new request. It's got a priority. It's assigned to the HR manager, and it has the workflow that's in here. So are you a full-time employee or part-time employee? Are you going to need a remote access or not need it? It's going to have the process it needs to be having. Severity is for service level agreements. The asset that's associated with it is in here, and the organization. It's a lot of the basics in this particular one. It doesn't have a ton of the extra oomph that you get with some of the other types of requests that you want. So this one is fairly basic. It goes in all of the other items. So here, you'll see employee onboard, and we also look at this one called IEM new employee. Now, what I did, I wanted to mention this one was because what I end up doing with this is I took the employee onboard quick pick, and I created this one called IEM new employee. Let me show you. So I went into here, and I went into the quick picks and I cloned it. And I created a quick pick from my employee called IEM. If I can get my attention in HI. IEM new employee was actually a clone from the ops new employee one, HR new employee. The reason I did that is because when I want to send an email in, then that particular email, this is a little bit easier to type than the other one was. So I'm looking at the invitation. So what it actually did was on 1435 here, 1435, that issue was created by an email I sent in yesterday. So it sent it in and it brought the email subject over, IEM new employee, which is the name of the quick pick. So we're bringing John Jones over. We've got his work location information. So this came from the quick pick. The body came over. Here's the information that I had in here. He starts on Monday the 15th. So that's the body of the email. This part comes from the quick pick description. So we appended the email description to the quick pick, and we also left the quick pick subject in here and then appended the subject line to the top of the email. So it's a quick and easy way of creating one. And then because we use the incoming email quick pick, it goes ahead and loads the work process also. So it's a good way of actually creating easy to remember naming conventions for your users to submit issues that can have workflows with it. Now, let's kind of move forward. Here, we've added in some of those other attachments, business rules, priorities, required by and target dates, substatus, user-defined fields. So we're going to look at the quality complaint and the facility repair request in here. So first, the quality complaint. So I'm going to go back to submit. So MFG, so get into the M's here, and here's your quality complaint. In this particular case, we're seeing already some differences. Is a user-defined field for the serial number, call organization location, substatus is here. Subject, full description, class, quality, issue type, priority and severity is on here, assigned to and next action, user-defined fields for purchase date, problem, and other information that we wanted to gather for the quality complaint, adding in additional capabilities. We have a project in here, so we've linked the project field in here so we can associate this issue in here. And then down here at the bottom again is your task manager. So we're adding additional fields just like we listed here for this particular capability. Facility repair request, so we'll take a look at that one. I'm getting ahead here with my clicks. So let's take it another one. Facility repair request. So this would be more of a work request, not a service request. Summary of repair needed. Again, you don't see some of the fields. Assigned to information, pretty straightforward on this one, base versus the other one. So again, it depends on your work request, your needs, what fields that you would like to see in here. But again, you have the capability. It's the same thing. You're just building flexibility into the product by using different features, different combinations of user-defined fields for each need. Now here, we're going to take a look at service requests using everything. So here, we're going to look at 1176. So we go and find 1176. And here you've got everything where this particular issue has even escalated. You can see the escalation history here at the top where it was unassigned for 2 hours. So what we did is we created an escalation rule. That's one of our business rules that says if it's been 2 hours from the time it was entered for the operations organization and where the issue is unassigned, I want to escalate this issue. Now we're going to go ahead and assign this to the customer service manager at that time. And we don't want to close the issue and we don't want to add any notes. We just want to get it to someone's attention so they can handle that issue. So that's why it was escalated. So it's currently been escalated. Now we can even go in with an additional feature in Issuetrak and de-escalate that issue if we need to. So we don't have to keep it escalated because that really wasn't, it could be that we decide, well, now it's assigned to someone is no longer needed to be an escalated issue. So we can de-escalate the issue. And that's what this button does. It takes away the escalation. So it was previously escalated, so now it's not. It won't show up with the red E on the windows anymore, but it still maintains the history of the escalation. It did occur. It's just the status of that issue as being an escalated issue has now been removed. Here the SLA is in effect. It shows you the terms of the standard SLA. It shows you all the terms for this particular SLA. This is the service level standard, and these are the priorities and the terms for that particular item. You see the submitted, the organization, the location. Now, findings is a user-defined field. Model number, that would be here. That would be another user-defined field that we've added. Here you've got who entered it, who's assigned to, and in this particular case, there was a couple of extra assignment history records in here. Sometimes this list can get long because it has one line per history item in it. So you can see the history of where an issue goes from one person to another person to another person through the assignment history. Status and substatus and the history of the change. Sometimes this is important because we can do reports off of this using the report writer, where we can look at where the issue was in this particular status, and then it was changed at this particular time. So we can look at that as far as a reportable item. Class. This is a actual for custom screens. We actually put a on-screen message on here. Then we have our process that we're using, and this one is a straightforward process. You just go right through the list and complete them all. Not a lot of branching like you saw with the onboarding. The total time, and you can see it's been sitting around a long time. It's been an example issue. It's been open to close is 13,000 hours on that one, with 180 labor hours on it. An email distribution list can be added to this particular issue. We're using that feature in here. So if we wanted to send or keep a user updated on the status of this issue, we could add them to the distribution list so they could receive notes or even know when that issue was closed. And it could be a user or a group. And some of the actual issue types, criteria like priority, organization, they may have their own underlying email distribution list that keeps people involved with us. So it's in communication going back and forth. Then down here at the bottom, you've got this note section. Now I want to point one thing out. You see this says hide notes? It's not clickable, is it? Yeah, it is. Now it says show notes. You click it again and it shows it. I just got caught up with a customer this week because of that particular feature. They hid the notes on a previous issue. So when they log back in and they pull the issue up, the hide notes was still active. So they didn't see the note history on that new issue that they were looking at. And I saw where this was being shown, and it just has this little link right here. So if you see this, there could potentially be notes hidden. You need to always click it. It always remembers the last state for your next time you use an issue. It always goes back to what that state was last time you logged in, so we know what state to show you this time. We consider that to be your preference for your view. Whether it is your preference or not, the site will remember what you did. Then down here is another kind of thing that can be used. There's an associated quick pick field in your custom screens that you can add in. So if you want to track the quick picks that were used to create the issues, you can kind of hide this underneath the existing notes. The notes that are in here, this is the note history. I kind of hide it at the bottom because I don't really need it for the actual information on the issue, but I'd like to keep that and be seen at the bottom of the page so that I can do reports off of it later on. And then in the severity down here, because I wasn't really using severities on this particular issue, I did put the severity at the bottom. A lot of times you'll put that with your priority. So you're picking which features you want to use out of these capabilities. And I do want to point out some of these modules. The modules you mostly will see up here if you have a license. You have to have a license for the modules. They are sold separately. They are add-ons. So you have to talk to your sales engineer. If you're interested in one of these, you want to talk to them. Yeah, like Tony's waving his hands, please call. But things like the asset management functionality, where you can put an asset on here. If you happen to be doing a service request against a CCTV, then you would like to know how many service requests you had for this particular make and model of CCTV. So you want to keep it as being know how many requests it's getting. Is this particular model doing a better job of service of getting fewer service calls than this particular model? So when I go back and buy another one, I want to go back and look at this history. And I can even look at some of the details of the records because I've got a actual record for the information related to that particular asset. And all of this stuff is reportable, as you'll find out in our next session that's coming up pretty soon. Now, other things in here. Let's take a look at the survey module. When I go into the survey module, then one of the things that we can do is we can create the surveys that go with the actual request. This is really important. For example, this is a customer satisfaction survey. So when we're looking at a customer satisfaction survey, whether it's a service request or a work request, we don't really care, but we want to know how well we're doing. A lot of times these particular numbers can affect what we get paid next year. Because if we're not keeping our customers happy, they're not going to want to pay us. And if it's an internal, it's worse because they're going to complain to their boss, who's going to complain to my boss, and you may not be working on Monday morning. So when, if a time comes and they need to do a RIF, then guess what? You may be the one that's not being good service, so therefore you're on the chopping block. So protect yourself with good information. But they have the ability to do things like ratings. They can add comments. You can even do different types of rows so you can rate the different values. There's all different kinds of capabilities in here. And we can send these on closing of issues automatically to the submitter of the issue. Or we can go ahead and email that to a customer using our deploy option here, which gives us the ability to actually send out a hyperlink like this so the customer can take the actual survey. And what it looks like to them, we'll go back to the surveys here, is what I just showed you. Here's the customer satisfaction survey. So I can go in here and say, okay, I'm going to rate everybody kind of in the middle. And then I strongly agree. I kind of neither. I strongly disagree. I skipped that one. And I don't know why, so therefore I'm going to leave that alone. So down the bottom, I'm done. And it just gives me a little thing that says, thank you. And then I'm going to refresh this page, and you're going to see now I'm going to get a response right there. And when I do this, I get the results. And what's nice about the results page is it puts all the information here on a quick and easy view. And it goes ahead, if you have more than one response, which I'm going to go back to another survey, for example, and do results page here, it's going to go ahead and give you total responses. It can do averages on some of these. It'll give you percentages, for example, of this was the response rate here. See how they've got percentages for each one? You can view names and phone numbers depending on what you get. So you have a nice results page that combines all of the results into an easy to read page for you to view.
Hey, Mike, can you talk about the value added proposition, if you will? Just the, obviously our support people use Issuetrak, and when you've closed a ticket, you'll get a survey. But the neat thing is it happens automatically.
Yeah.
So your likelihood of getting somebody to respond is infinitely higher than if you're sending these out once a week to all your tickets you closed.
That's why Paul and I, when we do our surveys, we try to send out survey requests after we're completed with our service so we can see how we're doing. We're trying to get improvement information. We want to know how well we're doing, so do we need to improve or change what our process is. So it depends on what your focus is. I had one customer that had one question survey, and it had a happy face and a non-happy face image on it. And what it was, it says, were you happy with our service or you weren't? And it was that dirt simple to them. So what they did is they would respond to every unhappy face. The manager of the service desk had to call and talk to everyone who sent them in an unhappy service face, so they could see what can we do to do things better. They got that personal interview and were required by a manager to do that. So it depends on what you're trying to get, but it's a great value because it's embedded within Issuetrak. It's got a great value where it's got so much flexibility in what you want to do. You'll notice on the survey section that even just looking at the titles in here, this is a one-question survey, this is a customer satisfaction survey, but look at this. This is an employee exit survey. That's a survey that's taken when a customer leaves or when a user leaves the company, and you want to do an HR exit survey to see what their experiences were. You may even do that for 90-day surveys or 30-day survey for a new hire to check in and see how they do. If you're talking about customers, you've got the ability to do the survey immediately after the fact, or you don't have to do every issue. You can go in here into the back to Issuetrak section here, and you can set this up so that each individual survey is actually being defined by the different issue type. So if it's a facilities survey, we send a facilities survey. If it happens to be an issue that happens to be an IT issue, we send an IT survey. And we don't have to send it every time. We can determine an interval. Say, I would like to say every 5th issue that closes, send a survey. That helps you when you've got a lot of issues being submitted, like an IT help desk. You don't want to just continue to bombard people with survey after survey after survey. You may want to do it every 5th, every 10th, every 20th, whatever you decide. And that way you don't have to always get surveys. You can get them on a kind of a, I guess, round robin type situation that you're looking at there. Now, the final one that's in this area is actually the billing module. Now, the billing module gives you the ability to create the products and services. And you can see here, I just added a few: development time, network services, quality assurance time, and support. So what I'm doing with this one is I'm trying to get billing information related to what services that were provided, maybe for a change management item or for a network services issue. So I'm going to bill those out, and my rates are all set. So each one of these can even have a rate involved. So we have a rate of $150 an hour. So if I put in 2 on here, I'm going to get a $300 extended rate on that. So what does that look like in Issuetrak? In Issuetrak, when you go in here, and I'll see if I can find an issue. So we'll look at this one. There's a CR, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to take a look at the CR, and we're going to say, okay, this is my estimate of time. So what I'm going to do is say the development time for this particular feature is 5 hours. So I tab it over, and you see the total is $750 on that. I'm going to look at QA time, and I'm going to say that's going to be 10 hours. So for one every development, you're going to get 2 hours of testing. And then you're going to look at that. Now they're cheap. So that's another $500. So your extended cost is $1,250. Now this becomes an individual billing line item that, again, you can create a report on. Now I've added those in. I'm going to update this. And if you need to, you can even have a printed work order that shows something that could be given to a manager, for example, or to print it off and given to a department manager, say this is what our estimate of this particular feature is going to cost us to build for you. Oh, by the way, you're going to get an internal bill back if I build this for you. So the internal, you may get a $1,250 bill back to your department for requesting this one feature, this one change, this one report, because we've now giving you numbers that we can work with. And I've had customers that done that. One of our customers actually purchased this many years ago, and what they ended up doing is they put the billing module in there because they had a particular office on the West Coast that was requesting a lot of their time to do report changes. So they started billing them by the hour and doing an interdepartmental billing, and they got a 6-figure billing for 1 month's worth of work. And they didn't realize how much time they were taking off of the IT team by making all those reporting change requests, and it was burning them up. So that kind of stopped pretty quickly. So Paul, you got
Mr. Mike,
something?
yeah,
Yes, sir.
we had a few questions come in, or some interesting things come in while you were going through the presentation, and I wanted to back up a few features. We
Okay.
had a couple of folks wanted to know about incoming email notifications, especially like notifying team members as all issues of a certain type are updated, like through add note, that type of thing.
Okay.
So if you could revisit that page, go back to administration and email notifications and speak to it a little bit, that would be great.
I'm going to start actually by going into the issue type, because especially if we're talking about a particular type of issue, then we'll start there and then I'll go into the email notification sections. So we're going to come down here in administration and get to the right place. And I'm going to go in here to the issue types, and I'm going to use issue types as an example because according to what the question is, we're looking at something that may say, okay, and we'll say this is a facilities issue. Okay, well, if a facilities issue comes in, I would like for a team of people to be notified by email that that issue has been submitted, updated, closed, whatever it happens to be. So you can go to the issue type and you look for this little hyperlink, view, maintain email distribution list. And you click on that. And when you click on that, it gives you the ability to add a new user. And the user you can add can be either a user or it could be a group. So you can add either one. So what happens is once you do that, and I'll do the agents group just for the heck of it. When I add that group, it is all members of the group will now receive an email whenever a issue that's in the facilities issue type is submitted, a note is added to those issues, or closed. So it gives you the ability to add a notification, and you can edit that list. You don't have to keep the default. You can change it. So I don't want it on, I may want it on submit. I don't care about note, but I want them to know that it was submitted, and I want to know that it was closed. And that's all I need. Managers a lot of times will do that. They need to know it exists. They need to know what's handled. That's all they need. They don't need the details in between. We run into that, Paul and I both run into that a lot with the different customers. There are a lot of features that's existing on the organization, the location, the department, the priority is in there. Subtypes have their own. So you can have an issue type or a subtype be involved. Sometimes we get into that when we do with network services. Yes, you got a follow up?
Yeah, the actual question was about as updates are made to a certain issue type. And so that's kind of the opposite situation, right, from what we normally hear, right? I would notify, in that case, if we want to know as updates are made to all issues of a certain type, I'd notify on add note and not on submit and close, right?
Exactly right.
That's as your updates are made. It's kind of the opposite situation that from what we normally hear. Kind of interesting, right?
It is an interesting situation, but that's the way you would do it. Paul's 100% right. You would reverse it out. That's what you do. So here we'll show you, it's just simple to do. You add the list and you uncheck the submit and you add in the note. And that's all you need. So that's going to be on updates. And usually with updates, you probably do note and close, but that would be up to you. It's however you want to do it.
Hey,
and so
Mike,
that would be all over the place. A lot of times that happens on things like facilities issues, where you have a facilities issue on a manager of a particular location. Location may be a department or may be a physical building. We see that used a lot there.
We also had somebody who wanted to know about enabling the SLAs feature.
Okay.
If you could walk through that really quickly.
You have to be a system administrator first. You have to have the permissions. And when you go into the system administrator, you can go to the gear icon, which is a shortcut to system administration, or you can go to administration, system, and then when you open up system, you get to system settings. It takes you to the same place. You'll want to go to the features page is where you want to go in order to make the enabling. And when you enable it, you'll scroll down. This is alphabetical, so it's going to be a little farther down. And you enable the feature service level agreements right here by checking this. Now this is important. Service level agreements looks at it from a point of view, from the submitting point of view or from the assigned point of view. For example, a lot of times with service level agreements, you're looking at the submitter by organization. So a service level for one organization may be different from another organization. So you want to look at it from the submitter's point of view. Other service levels are from the service point of view. So what happens is if it goes to the IT help desk, it has one service level, but it goes to the NOC team, the network operations group, it's going to have a different service level because the time frames may be different for expectations if it goes to NOC versus it going to the IT help desk. So that's the assigned point of view. So you want to always make sure that you understand that. Now, once you enable this, though, you're not done. You need to make sure that the features enable. You'll see it in the administration menu called SLAs. And the other thing you'll have to do is you'll have to come in and do your definings. So you'll have to look at 3 areas. Number 1, I always go to the severities area and I define my severity terms I want to use. These will not have any pre-fills in them, so there'll be nothing here. You'll need to add in the values: high, low, medium, critical, SEV 1, SEV 2, SEV 3, red, level, green, it doesn't matter. Whatever your terms are for your agreement. That's just the terms. Then you'll need to add in the service level. If you're doing an internal company, a lot of times it's 1 service level. If you're doing it for external customers, you may have multiple service levels that you may need to add in here. The main thing is you'll go in and give it the terminology that you're going to use. So this would be the name. And then it does require some comments in here. So you'll see that. Once you do that, then you'll update it and make sure you go to the terms hyperlink on the far right-hand side. Add your terms by going in, and I'm just going to edit one. You'll go in and you'll add the term at the top. Time to respond is from submitted to first hour. You want 1 hour in there, for example. If it's going to be a 1 hour, it's from submitted to 1 hour. You have to add a public note to the issue. Public. I want to make that very strict. You cannot put a private note. It can't be just assigned. It has to be a public note added to the issue is your response. Time to resolution is close. It's closed. Now, many times we get customers that only care about response and they don't care about closing. When you do that, put a high number, 999, 9,099, 999 usually works. So that's 999 hours. Usually you're going to close that issue within 100 hours, 1,000 hours. So you want to go ahead and put that in there. And then you have a coverage Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, whatever it happens to be. It means that every issue that's in this particular priority, this particular severity, must be responded to between 8 and 5 within 1 hour. Now that means if it comes in at 4:59 in the afternoon, it still must be responded to within 1 hour. But if it comes in at 5:01, you can wait till tomorrow. Okay? You have to add that. The final piece you have to add is what's called the agreement. And you must add the agreement because the agreement creates the association from the issue record. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick add here. You can set them up by group, by org, or by asset. Most people are going to have group or organization in here. So a VIP group, for example, or a customer organization could be created, and I can make sure that I've got different rules associated with them. So both of them work. Hope that answered your question. Paul, we got something else? Because it looked like you've got a question.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is that the gotcha here, that what we see our customers miss is the terms, right? So
yes.
We're talking about SLAs. And because it's not listed in the gray part of the left-hand menu where I tell everybody to look, right? So people end up missing the terms on SLAs. I think
the other thing is the end dates. Make sure you set them way out because these were actually designed to be sold on like an annual basis. Is what we originally designed them to be. But many times, especially on an internal, it's going to be years before they would ever be. So you may want to set it out 10 years in the future. So that would be the thing so it doesn't run out.
We've got a ton of great resources out there about setting up SLAs, using SLAs, best practices. A lot of it's in our help center. Some of it's in our training library. Just let us know if you'd like to take a look at all of that.
Well, I see we're running short of time. If there are any unanswered questions in the queue, or if you have any additional questions that you would like to post to any one of us, you can hold them to the end because we will have a question and answer session at the end of the next hour. But we will go ahead and be able to answer them there, or you can send them directly to our emails, which you should have. If not, send them to proservices@issuetrak.com, and Paul and I will get a copy of it. All right, so we're going to stop now and give me about 5 minutes before I start talking again. When we're going to talk about Report Writer today. So we'll pick up right at around 2 o'clock. It might be about 2:01 before we get back on, but I want to make sure that everybody knows we're going to take just a short break and then come right back. So thank you for attending this first session, and we look forward to talking to you in a couple minutes.